Welcome to today's meeting. We are happy to have you here, whether in person or on Zoom or watching on one of our live feeds. We hope you'll continue to join us in whichever manner you feel most comfortable. Thank you for your understanding and for participating today. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again to everyone who is joining us tonight. Before we move through the agenda, I want to mention and remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure our meetings move along well and help everyone feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules of decorum are available at the door, and our staff will post the link in Zoom. This brings us to item A4. The council will approve the work session meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2023 and July 13th, 2023, as well as the formal meeting minutes of July 11th, 2023, July 13th, 2023, July 18th, 2023, and August 8th, 2023. I'll look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Poi and seconded by Councilmember Valderón. Oh, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Next council business is item A5. The council will consider adopting a joint ceremonial resolution with Mayor Mendenhall declaring the second Monday in October is Indigenous Peoples Day in Salt Lake City. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome our guests, Haley Roberts, Alyssa Pretty on Top, Darius Thranas, and Peyton Roberts. I will turn the time over to Council Member Alejandro Poi to read the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the joint resolution declaring the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Days in Salt Lake City, whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was proposed in 1977 by the delegation of Native nations to the United Nations-sponsored International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, and whereas Salt Lake City recognizes that the city is built upon the homelands of the indigenous peoples of the region, whose histories are intertwined with the settlement of Salt Lake City, and whereas Salt Lake City established its Human Rights Commission in 2005, committing itself to protect, respect, and fulfill the full range of inherent human rights for all and set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and numerous other international human rights treaties, and whereas Salt Lake City values Indigenous people's contribution to our community, including sharing their culture and fostering progress in technology, science, philosophy, arts, and substantially shape the character of our city, and whereas Salt Lake City opposes systematic discrimination towards Indigenous people in the United States, which perpetuates high rates of poverty and income inequality, exacerbating disproportionate health and education and social crisis, and whereas Salt Lake City supports policies and practices to close the equity gap for Indigenous peoples by supporting policies and practices that ensure broader access to resources and opportunities, and by honoring our nation's Indigenous roots, history, and contributions, and whereas Indigenous communities and tribes in Utah support officially recognizing the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day and celebrate this day to promote understanding and friendship and to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination stemming from colonization. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Salt Lake City Council and Mayor of Salt Lake City strongly support that Indigenous Peoples Days shall be an opportunity to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of Indigenous peoples in our region. Be it further resolved that Salt Lake City Council and Mayor of Salt Lake City strongly encourages Salt Lake City public schools to teach the culture, government, and history of indigenous peoples on this day and encourage residents, business organizations, and public institutions to recognize Indigenous Peoples Days.
Thank you. I'll look for a motion.
Move for approval. Second.
Right. It has been moved by Councilmember Petro and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, should we take a photo?
Yes.
Present this.
Yeah, if we can have our guests come up to the front, we'd like to take a formal photo.
No. Ana.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say a moment of privilege. And the reason why I brought these ponchos for me and Alejandro, these ponchos are very traditional in Argentina to represent the gauchos in Argentina, but also the indigenous communities in Argentina, like the Mapuches. And so I feel like we have some sort of fraternity with our indigenous populations here in our community. So I hope that you feel that. We love you. We're proud of our indigenous communities where we were born. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Okay, next council business is item A6. The council will consider adopting a joint ceremonial resolution with Mayor Mendenhall declaring November as Native American Heritage Month in Salt Lake City. I'm happy to read the resolution. Whereas Salt Lake City is built on homelands of the Utes, all bands, Paiute, Goshute, Dene Navajo, Shoshone, Arapaho, Oglala Sioux, Cheyenne River Sioux, Wind River Shoshone, Cherokee, or Rosebud Sioux tribes and their respective bands who have called the Salt Lake Valley and the Wasatch Range home and have been stewards of the land for thousands of years. And whereas Native Americans residing within Salt Lake City are a unique and diverse population representing many tribal nations, cultural values, celebrations, and achievements, and whereas Native Americans have contributed to the prosperity of Salt Lake City through treaties, resources, lands, stewardship, culture, traditions, and commerce, and whereas we honor and celebrate the importance of Indigenous people as distinguished scholars, veterans, teachers, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, leaders, and more, and their immeasurable contributions to our city and our society. And whereas we strive to improve communications with services to and partnership with all city residents as we strive for justice, equality, respect, and prosperity for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Salt Lake City Council and Mayor of Salt Lake City declare the month of November 2023 as Native American Heritage Month. I'll look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
The motion has been moved by Councilmember Pui and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, very quickly, I know that this was mentioned a few minutes ago. As a brown person in Argentina, and a person that has now, thanks to DNA, know how much of a percentage I have of Native in my own blood. It comes to more than 40% of me. And Argentina hasn't had, unfortunately, we have a very horrendous stories to tell about our indigenous populations, and not much different than what we have experienced here in this country and in many other countries. And coming to accepting myself and being proud of my heritage and what it comes to me has not been an easy place for me. But I'm proud to know that now. I'm proud to be a Native myself, and I'm proud to have connections to this land and this continent that is deeper than many others. I just wanted to throw that out there because the poncho, and these symbols and them, these writings and pictures mean a lot to us. And I was ashamed for many years about this because I didn't know, and culture was teaching me the opposite of that. But I'm glad that we are recognizing this moment, and while we're not recognizing the tribes that I belong to, we are recognizing all tribes in some ways. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I would also like to give an opportunity to our guests, if any of you would like to say a few words. Of course. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and, like I said, commitment to being able to accept these resolutions from the city. Okay. This brings us to the council public hearings. If you'd like to comment on a public hearing today, we are accepting comments in person and online on Zoom. If you need to speak with our staff, please select Scott Corpani from the list of participants. If you need to, you can also raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling those who wish to comment based on the order we received the names. If you are on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. Our first public hearing is for grant application items B1, grant application Marathon Community Investment Grant, Fire Swift Water Rescue, B2, grant application 2024 Bureau of Emergency Medical Services allocation grant, and B3, ordinance budget amendment number 2 for fiscal year 2023-24, which will be heard as one public hearing. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to council staff, policy analyst Sylvia Richards and Ben Lutke to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The city applies for and receives grants which help to support and fund some city programs. Each grant application is reviewed and then receives a public hearing, which gives the public and the council an opportunity to comment on them. Tonight, there are 2 grants, as you mentioned. The Bureau of Emergency Medical Services grant, which funds an annual allocation to the fire department for emergency services and emergency preparedness. Second is the Marathon Community Investment Grant for Fire Swift Water Rescue. The city's fire department water rescue team is the closest water rescue team to Marathon Oil and would respond if a person were to become trapped in a waterway. They would also respond in case of any hazardous spills. Funds would provide ice suits and water rescue dry suits. And now I'd like to turn the time over to Ben Ludke to introduce budget amendment number 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. There are 28 items in budget amendment number 2 with expenditures totaling over $4 billion. There are also 8 new full-time employees proposed. Some of the largest items include $25 million from the first issuance of the voter-approved Parks, Trails, and Open Space Bond for several projects around the city. There's also $3 million from the annual Homeless Shelter Cities Mitigation State Grant. Over $2 million from the U.S. Treasury's Emergency Rent Assistance Program. And $1 million from a 4-year U.S. Environmental Protection Agency grant to create a climate change mitigation plan. The staff report and the administration's proposals are all available in today's meeting packet. The council has a budget website, which we update throughout the process around the year. It can be found at tinyurl.com/SLC FY24. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia and Ben. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 6 people registered to speak to these items. The first will be Janet Hemming, followed by Tom Lund, and then Steve Long. Janet is here in person.
Funds allocated for Miller Park should be spent on what the original CIP grant applicant and hundreds of residents have petitioned for over the last 10 years, the restoration of the Lower Creekside Trail. But they don't. As such, without money set aside for the number one thing that residents and avid park users want, this allocation becomes an exercise in wasteful government spending. Let me explain. In 2014, the city spent $750,000 to reimagine Miller Park. What happened? 1,000 trees were cut and destroyed. A perfectly functioning irrigation system was replaced with a new one that's usually broke. The stream was transformed into dozens of little mini dams, most of which have now failed, and an already mentioned, a perfectly functioning and user-friendly trail was dismantled. The effects of this carnage are still being felt today. Contrary to what you were told at today's work session, there are no engineering reports opposing restoration of the lower trail. We want to protect the 100-year-old historic walls, but that too will only hide existing problems. Tons of new soil would be brought in to stop erosion at the base of the walls, but this same soil will also bury broken sprinklers, broken pipes, sinkholes, and exposed utility boxes that cause tripping hazards. The park is crying for help. Those 1,000 trees have never been replaced. Please use this money for things the public has repeatedly requested, not maintenance projects proposed in this misguided public lands plan.
Next will be Tom Lund, followed by Steve Long, and then Lisa Long. Tom is here in person.
Thank you. I walk the trail almost every day, and so many people walk this trail, 400 or 500 people a day, roughly. And I'm here to support what Jan just spoke of, and say that we would be really appreciative if this city council could see their way to restoring that upper trail that so many of us use. It's meaningful. It's meaningful for old people. It's meaningful for little preschoolers who walk the trail. And there's a sense of, I guess, gestalt, or the psychology of just seeing the whole trail near the stream as close as you can, safely. It's never washed out. We hope that the CIP money, which is, it's been 5 or 6 years since it was approved, can be used for this purpose, and we appreciate any support that you can give us. I've reviewed the report from the engineers. earlier this year, and also an older report around 1987. No one, as has been mentioned, has opposed the trail. So we hope that we can have your support in restoring it. It's a unique and special place. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Steve Long, followed by Lisa Long, and then James Webster. Steve is here in person.
Well, obviously we're here to discuss the usage of the grant money, and I can't imagine why we wouldn't use it for what it was intended for originally. Anytime we have an appropriation of money in a government institution and the money is rerouted to somewhere else, as far as I'm concerned, it's typically misappropriation of funds. And if we're having this meeting to make it okay to alter the usage of funds, then I suggest you just give the money back and forget about it. Now, we need to put this lower trail back in. That's what the fund was for. And I've been told that it's a safety issue. Well, there's never been a safety issue on the trail as it was prior to the reconstruction of the canyon. That trail continues on down the canyon, and if you walk just a little bit further, that's right where the trail is now, except for in this section where it was dismantled. Now, and if you want to talk safety, we need to talk about the current trail, because no engineer in his right mind would have ever signed off on that trail as safety. There is no safety in it. I've been up and down that trail for years, and I can tell you, if you go in the wintertime, you better be hanging onto the railing or you're going to find yourself on a bumpy ride down a 48-degree slope. It's not safe. Now, the idea to address the problem without replacing the lower trail back where it was is to create a giant staircase and tear out the entire side of the hill. Ridiculous plan. Now they want to do the repair to the sprinklers because in order to save the wall, the historic wall, the sprinklers are all in the wrong places. They're damaging the wall, and it was completely moronic when they installed them in the first place. But my opinion is we have an $85 million bond to repair the parks. That's where the money for the sprinkler repair should come from. I would think that that's what that was passed as a bond for. Sorry, okay. And ever since that we've done the repairs to the canyon after the oil spill.
So that is time.
Oh, okay. I just want to say one last thing. We need to do something for the constituents that would be a smart thing, and that would be to replace the trail.
Thank you. And if you have additional comments, you can certainly share those with staff to share with the council.
Next will be Lisa Long, followed by James Webster, and then Christina Robb. Lisa's here in person.
My family has lived on Miller Park for nearly 30 years. We raised our 2 children here, and they played in the creek for years, and now our grandson plays there. We used to be able to take a stroller and circle around the park on the 900 South End until 2014, when a dangerous hill with no stairs was built with absolutely no regard for safety. Many people fell down. After a large number of complaints, a haphazard stairway was installed. Still unsafe, not practical, and a waste of money. We, the people of the neighborhood, did not want this. I believe this was done in a vindictive manner to spite those of us who completely disagreed with the direction of Parks and Land's supposed upgrade and repair after the oil spill. Now Parks and Lands is refusing to allow a grant that was approved to move the trail back to its original location by the creek, where it belongs. Miller Park used to be a lovely bird refuge, nature park until 2014. We had an annual neighborhood cleanup, removing garbage, ivy growing on the trees, weeds, graffiti, and deadwood. The deadwood was then put through a chipper and placed on the pathway. Parks would then pick up all the debris and haul it off. This was done for about 25 years in cooperation with Parks and the citizens of the Yellcrest neighborhood. In 2012, Parks would no longer allow it. Everything that Parks has done since 2012 has damaged, not improved the park. This includes cutting trees during nesting season, spraying poison deadly to humans and wildlife, destroying the canopy without an environmental impact study. Now we have very few birds and tons of cheatgrass and foxtails, which will injure dogs. Thank you.
Next will be James Webster, followed by Christina Robb. James, you may now unmute.
Taylor, we can't hear James here in the meeting.
We will troubleshoot with James and move on to Christina Robb, who is here in person.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Robb, and I'm here as a proud member of an EMS family. And I would like to ask your support to support our men and women in EMS, specifically fire, with the first two items on this list regarding ICE and swiftwater rescue. As a person who has spent time providing emergency support to our youth in areas of town who have needed a lot of attention from fire and rescue, I just want to be clear that how much time these people spend of their own, on their own training for things like scuba and swiftwater. And I hope that you support this grant. The second thing I'm here to talk about is as another hat in the role of chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization. And we want to support and thank you for working through the special assessment business districts among things that are supporting our businesses, especially along the 900 South corridor. In Elko right now, we are surrounded by two massive road construction projects, 1100 East and 900 South, both funded by what's it called? The Future, I can't remember what it's called, but Funding Our Future grant. And we're really excited to help those businesses, but have felt that we are not able to do as effectively as we want to. And by supporting this, we feel like we will be able to help our businesses much better in the future. Thank you.
We will circle back to James Webster once more. James, you may now unmute if you are able to.
Taylor, we still can't hear James within the meeting room.
All right, it looks like the issue with James is continuing, so we will message with him and get his comments another way.
Great, thank you. Thank you to everyone who made a comment. We appreciate you being both here and online. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and refer the items to a future consent agenda and adopt an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2024 final budget for Salt Lake City, including the employment staffing documents only for the items shown. I am doing it wrong. I noticed early, but someone is ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and refer the budget items, budget amendment and two grants to a future date for action.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Dugan, seconded by Councilmember Petro. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Our next item is B4, and it's regarding the ordinance for rezone and master plan amendment at approximately 1435 South State Street. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a proposal to amend the zoning map and future land use map for the properties at 1433, 1435 South State, 1433 South Edison Street, and 121 East Cleveland Avenue from their current CC or corridor commercial and R1 5000 single-family residential zoning designations to FBUN2, which is form-based urban neighborhood zoning. In addition, the proposal calls for amending the Central Community Master Plan future land use map from the current medium mixed use and low-density residential designations to high mixed use. The petitioner's stated objective is to consolidate the parcels and construct a mixed-use development consisting of commercial spaces and apartments.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is one person registered to speak to this item, and that will be Joe Gallegos. Joe, you may now unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I have the property right next to 121. I live on 127. And the first time I heard about the development was early spring-ish. And I put some comments in about why, because there are only 3 houses on the street that aren't not going to be demolished by the development. And so I was wondering why they didn't reach out to the 3 buildings, right? Myself and my neighbors. And initially the person said that they left a Post-it note on the door. And, you know, I get calls all the time for the property, right? I get calls for other people's properties, you know, that I don't own. And so, which is fine, right? I'm okay to keep my house. But my concern would be parking, right? What about the parking on the street right in front of my house? Am I going to be able to, is my son going to be able to park his car there? I don't know, right? If it's high use, maybe there should be some sort of permit parking on the street instead of just everyone parking wherever they can. And then the second concern would be the development's going to be right next to my house, right? Is there going to be a barrier between my house and that property? Because it seems like the barrier that exists right now is going to be taken down somehow. And then in the back, the warehouse in the back, my property backs up against the warehouse in the back. There's no dividing line, nothing separating the warehouse in the back from
Fine. That was the final registered commenter for this item.
Thank you for your comments. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, are we in item B4, right?
We are.
Okay, I'm doing it right, I think. I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Councilmember Poi and seconded by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Our next item is B5 and is regarding an ordinance for the anti-gentrification and displacement plan Thriving in Place. Before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Allison Rowland, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the city's anti-displacement plan, known as Thriving in Place, and it outlines the city's aspirations for increasing the supply of affordable housing. The council is scheduled to take action on this item on October 17th. In the most recent conversations, the council has requested the department focus specifically on developing policies for a 2-year action plan and on devising alternatives to the existing housing loss mitigation ordinance. And these are included in the current version of the plan. This plan also outlines what would be needed for implementation. This includes ordinance changes, ongoing state-level advocacy, new community partnerships, and budget and staffing increases. And some of these budget increases will have to be significant in order to achieve full implementation of the plan. Some of the proposed policies and programs would be entirely new, and others would build on city work that is already underway. Any of the near-term action priorities that require council action will be transmitted separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 4 people registered to speak to this item. The first will be Cindy Cromer, followed by Todd McMullen, and then Christina Robb. Cindy's here in person.
I'm still Cindy Cromer. In my experience, the city does not do things this important, this well, very often. Bravo.
Next will be Todd McMullen, followed by Christina Robb, and then Jason Wessel. Todd's here in person.
Thank you. It's my honor to be able to speak to you tonight. I've spent the past 25 years of my life working in volunteerism, and I am here to speak to that point tonight. Specifically, I was the founder of the United Way of Dixie, then the co-founder of a local Salt Lake City-based volunteer management software company called Samaritan Technologies. Later, the director of the nationwide Disaster Help Network, which was the largest volunteer mobilization for disasters from 2003 to 2008. Following that, the Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement, which is a nationwide forum for volunteer engagement. More recently, I work as a consultant and recently published an article on the subject of volunteerism in the largest national journal for that subject. That's the Engage Journal, and the topic was digital care circles. My point tonight, council members, is simple. That as wonderful as Thriving in Place is, and it is, and I agree with you, ma'am, that was wonderful, okay? We will not be able to succeed without better engaging our citizenry. We need to rethink how it is that we get in touch with our citizens and get them engaged specifically with homeless population, the population which is currently experiencing homeless, in micro mechanisms. Picking them up for appointments, picking them up for whatever. I could go on and on, read my articles. That's really not my point to get into the details tonight. But no amount of funding, no amount of grants, no amount of taxpayers' money will solve that problem. And that's been proven in dozens of other cities and efforts. And so that's my point tonight, is that we need to do a better job. And yes, I have ideas. I've talked to Dan about them. I've talked to James Alfondre about them. There are some good specifics available. That's all.
Next will be Christina Robb, followed by Jason Wessel. Christina's here in person.
Hi, I'm Christina Robb again, and I am serving as the chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization. I'm here to speak to the Thriving in Place on behalf of my entire board, and to thank the administration and the council and all of the planning and staff, the city in general, for putting together this incredible piece of work that will serve our entire community. I'm lucky to serve with the board that spent almost a year studying Thriving in Place down to the very granular details, and working really closely with the planning department to improve the project along the way. And they were very open to understanding some of our concerns that had to do with data details, and change things to inform the process. So again, bravo, good work, and thank you.
And next will be Jason Wessel, followed by Monica Hilding. Jason is here in person.
Recall, this is just easier to pick up. Or not. All right. Sorry, I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Human Rights Commission, vice president of the West Side Coalition, and until recently, a vice chair of the Rose Park Community Council. And I'll say the Human Rights Commission has been engaged by the people behind Thriving in Place since before it was called Thriving in Place. Over the last almost 2 years, they have come and given us updates and presentations on the topic. We've got to see as it changed with community engagement and community feedback. One of our former commissioners, Dr. Evis Garcia, was instrumental from very early on until she moved to Texas. So I'm just going to echo what other people have said, and the level of community engagement and outreach that went into Thriving in Place was extraordinary, and really want to commend them for it. So with that, I'll keep it under a minute. Thank you.
And next is Monica Hilding. Monica, you may now unmute.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm worried that there's not enough staffing in place. The planning staff said they didn't need additional help for the next 2 years. And it seems to me that enforcement is an important part of making sure that landlords fulfill their good landlord obligations. And Representative or Council Member Petro this afternoon made a good point as far as the concern about the confluence of this and the affordable housing bill. And so I don't understand all of it really well, but I do think that the city definitely needs more people in enforcement of the ordinances and the laws that they have, especially for catching up with people who are doing Airbnb and instead of rentals downtown. There are so many empty buildings most of the time because of people who are renting out this way. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
And that was our final registered commenter for this item.
Okay, thank you for everyone who made a comment. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a later date.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Councilmember Dugan and seconded by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we have no potential action items. Are there any questions for the mayor? And Mayor, thank you again for being here. Council members?
Yeah, I have a question. So Mayor, we just went to your office with the Other Side Village. So would you tell us what that was all about? Just as a reminder of what you signed.
Don't get used to it. Don't get used to it.
What is that? It's a microphone.
I didn't even notice it. Is this a trick?
No.
Let me just say to the public, the mayor's had never had a microphone in the work session. Thank you for the formal meeting microphone. I know we're not in the work session. What did you ask me about the village? I'm just so stunned. This wasn't here during the work session, was it? Oh my gosh.
I asked you about what you just signed in your office. We all took a picture with you and the Other Side Village. So
Yeah,
the public knows.
well, thanks to you, council, for working with us on what was, I think I can say squarely, the most complicated contract deal that my administration has worked through, even considering the Inland Port Authority agreement. The Other Side Village took thousands of decisions that were never contemplated in the city before. So thank you. We just signed the development agreement, and the Other Side Village is now entitled to roll ahead. So big step forward. Thank you, City Council.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Mono? Oh, no. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor. We are now at the general comment portion of our agenda. As a reminder for those joining on Zoom, Scott Corpani from our staff will moderate our Zoom and will message you with any questions about your registration. Staff is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal information updates. If you do need to speak with our staff, please select Scott from the list of participants. If you need to, please raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling those who wish to comment based on the order of registration or received comment cards. If you are on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you are unable to finish your comment, please send the rest via email, mail, or call our office. Taylor, you can begin with our first general comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 2 people registered for general comment. The first will be Bernie Hart, followed by Christina Robb. Bernie is here in person.
Good evening. It was nice to hear all those nice comments earlier. It was really cool. A couple of things. The Other Side Village is a big deal. And I think 3 of the council people got together this week to talk about homelessness. And that's always a topic of discussion. And I believe the Operation Rio Grande was mentioned. And for the first time, I heard of public officials actually say it wasn't an overwhelming success. And I appreciate that, because for years with the former mayor and the chief of police and the mayor's staff, all as I heard is what a great job it was and how much it accomplished and da-da-da-da-da. And when I looked at the numbers, and actually it took me about a year to get numbers, the $60 million or whatever it was helped one person. One person went through drug rehab successfully. And so somehow we've created an image that if we spend money on something, it works and it's helping people. And through that comment, I hoped that in the Other Side Village, a lot of money going in there, all good intentions, have the potential to help people. It's being done with the intention to help people, but oversight and performance auditing are a couple of factors that we don't pay a lot of attention to when we're spending taxpayer dollars with the intention of doing good. And yes, you're limited in what you can impact through the city council, but you can ensure that what you do well. And it is achieving what you want to achieve. And through that auditing, set a standard for anybody in the state or in the country. Thank you.
Next is Christina Robb, who is here in person.
I'm Christina Robb, and I serve as chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization. I'm really lucky that everything I always want to talk to happens to be on the same night, so 3 in a row. I'm here to just inform you of some of the issues that we had regarding the property at 1018 East 900 South, not with the lovely property owners or in any way, but in trying to describe to residents and neighbors how a downzone would increase density. We did a lot of outreach in that area, and we talked to all of the adjoining residents, talked to the fire department across the street to try and understand what people were struggling with. We did find that there was a little miscommunication between the realtor who was speaking for the property owners, and that we had to do a little bit of education around the, this zoning change. And also with the fact that this property owner wasn't necessarily going to put in a request to demolish or rebuild. So people in our area didn't really understand why go through this in the first place. So thanks again to the planning staff for helping us walk through that and for educating our neighbors. We think this is probably going to be a problem going forward, so we support the zoning changes that bring the RMF 35 and 30 things together so that we no longer have to go through all of this effort to explain why we need density in certain residential areas that it's already allowed. Thank you.
And that was the final registered commenter.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We have no new business. So this brings us to unfinished business. Item F1 regarding an ordinance for residential parking permit program amendments.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending section 12.64.040 of the Salt Lake City Code related to criteria for parking permit program.
Second.
Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Mono and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, very short moment of personal privilege. I just want to say thank you to Central Ninth Community Council, specifically Tamara Mateus. This is a really specific change in our ordinance that she has been working on with our administrative staff as well for a long time, and it doesn't really affect that many parts of the city necessarily, but it was a lot of work from the community and from the mayor's staff as well to get to this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is regarding an ordinance for the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, local nonprofit pass-through assistance grant awards. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving the American Rescue Plan Act local nonprofit pass-through assistance grant awards as shown in the Exhibit B funding log.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Councilmember Pui and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I want to disclose that one of the recipients, Swazo Business Center, I was part of the organizing committee for their 20th gala. I am no longer with them for that and have no likelihood, there's no reason that I will benefit from any of this, but just wanted to disclose that in the name of transparency before voting.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, this brings us to Section G, the consent portion of our agenda. I will look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Missed who that was.
Me.
Chris is fast tonight.
This is your bread
All
and
right.
batter right
It has been moved by Councilmember Pui and seconded by Councilmember Wharton.
Other way around.
It has been moved by Councilmember Wharton and seconded by Councilmember Pui.
Yes.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. This concludes our Salt Lake City Council meeting. The council's formal meeting now stands adjourned.